Hi, you're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction.
Hi, I'm Cameron Brand. I'm the CEO and co-founder of EveryoneSocial, and I'm excited today to be talking to Jenny Newman. Jenny Newman is someone who we've known and worked with for a number of years. She is currently the Senior Manager of Social Media and Communications Learning, Development, and Education at Dell Technologies. And we're going to talk about this, but Jenny's been in similar roles around kind of training and enablement at Dell related to social media, employee usage of social at work for quite some time. So I think you're probably the foremost expert in that category of things of anyone we've certainly talked to on this podcast. So Jenny, really nice to have you on.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible introduction. Can you come to dinner parties with me and introduce me that way? Because I love it. Yes, thank you. It's so great to be here, Cameron. Seriously.
Oh, good.
Thanks for having me, especially because with the L&D aspect, it's the secret word for training that we don't like to tell people, right?
Right.
Most people don't want to talk about education, but I'm super, super excited that you have invited me here today, and I look forward to our convo.
Cool. Yeah, well, just some, for me, I think some basic questions, both for myself and I'm sure the majority of those listening. Simple one. You've been in L&D roles for from what I can tell, basically 11, 12 years at Dell. Mm-hmm. And, a lot's obviously happened with Dell as a company over that period. A lot's happened with social media. What is the scope of social media training? I mean, is there anyone it doesn't touch at Dell, or kind of, I guess kind of what is the scope of L&D been for you around social media training?
Yeah, so I think originally, back in the day, like right when the platforms were just starting to develop and get their own footing, the scope used to be just anybody that would do it and test it, right? It's those pioneers of social where they were like, "What's the Twitter?" and wait, "What's this thing called Facebook?" And so our scope started off really small, but nowadays it's global. And we are looking at so many different people that are using social media, whether it is internally to connect with their fellow employees and teammates, or externally with their customers and partners. And so this has become such a huge thing. I would think over the last 5 years is really when it picked up, where we used to train such a small amount of people that were brave. And now we're training everybody that comes to our company around social media and what that looks and feels like for them.
What does social media training look like? Maybe how does it differ based on, particular group? I know you've done things with kind of general employee base. I know you've done things with the senior level executives. I guess 2 questions, kind of how does it differ? And can you define some number of groups that you've kind of constructed training around?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of break this down into different subsegments. The first one being general employees, people that work for Dell Technologies and want to to be active on social media. We have a baseline training that we give to our employees around our policy, like what exactly can they do or say on behalf of the company when it comes to sharing on social media. And we think that that's important because what we don't want them to do is to break any platform rules or legal rules. We just want them to have the basics down before they go out there and are super active, right, on behalf of our company and the brand. So we have that general, we call it SMAC certification. So it's social media and communications certification, essentially to make sure that those people know what they can and cannot do. So that's that baseline stuff. And then from there, we kind of move into 2 other different categories. There's those that want to go a little bit higher and deeper in their own social journey. And then we have a route for executives. I'll talk about the regular employees first, those that really want to own their own social. We offer them training not only on how to set up their brand, so really truly understand who they are, what they want to be known for on social, how they want to represent their expertise. We try to help them actualize that, but on the social side. So, how would you talk about your expertise on Twitter? What would that look like on Instagram? How would you provide thought leadership, let's say on LinkedIn? And we help them kind of identify these main topic points from their brand perspective. Once they have those topic points, we go to the profile. Now, how are you digitally showing in a static profile who you are and what you want to be known for? And then last but not least is the sharing piece of this. And it's what type of Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs are you leaving for people to show and prove that you are this person that you say you are? Like if your profile says, oh, I'm an expert in cloud client computing, well, shouldn't I be talking about that on my profiles? Shouldn't I be talking about that in the content that I share? Should I be part of groups that are discussing this? So we really pull people along in those three main areas to help them better understand how to do it, what it looks like statically, and how to share it, ultimately out to their network. From an executive standpoint, we do something very similar, but this is at a totally different level. Most employees that come to us for that deeper learning, they don't quite know yet. Some of them don't who they are and what they want to be, right? So it's a different conversation where we're almost like dentists pulling teeth. We're like, nope, that tooth didn't work, but we're going to stick this other one in, and that feels right. But the executives, they know. They've been driving business for a long time at Dell. So for them, it's really more of help me really truly understand how to reach my audience. What can I be doing from a posting cadence? What story am I trying to tell? And I think that's the biggest thing, is that for most employees, it's a little bit more task-based. It's set up these things. Let's update your profile. Let's get you into posting. And for the executives, it's more about what story are we telling for you? How are we showing that story? And how are people interacting with that story? And those are kind of those two branches that start to grow from baseline certification. And that's the education that we provide here at Dell Technologies around social.
That's great. Any particular over the last few years, has there been any tailoring of the training for particular groups, right? Like we've seen, especially kind of over the pandemic, increases in usage by sales, by kind of, I guess, field teams, right?
Yeah.
Sales, recruiting in particular.
Oh, yes. So from a sales perspective, we've seen such a huge uptick of social media usage. And I think it just took a while. I don't necessarily, I think the pandemic kind of kicked it in the butt, so to speak, where we got, we had salespeople that knew social media was a nice avenue to reach customers and to share thought leadership, but it was just one of those nice to haves. It wasn't a have to have. And over time, when email became way more cumbersome, when the phone stopped being picked up, and when people just got tired of going through the same old, song and dance with somebody arriving at their door, they realized that social was a nice alternative because you could talk to people in their element and meet them where they were at, whether that was on Instagram enjoying, maybe a certain subset of British baking, if you will, or if it was me on LinkedIn as part of a social media group, just trying to learn how to better utilize it for marketing. So sales really found that there was a way for them to show up in these places where other people were already active and to be part of a community. And that was the thing, is that they weren't thinking of social media as a community builder. They used to think of it as a broadcast medium. Like, let me get my sales messages out. Let me show you all the products that we have. Let me show you that. Let me yell at you instead of let me talk with you. And so that shift has happened over the last, I would say, again, 5 years, where people realized, oh, wait, I've actually got to build relationships through this. This is a relationship building mechanism. It's a modality for me to kind of connect into common things that people like, that I also like, that are authentically me, authentically my brand. So I'm not faking this. I'm actually part of this community. And I'm also making connections. And I'm also, striking when opportunity presents itself. I'm not saying that social is the end all be all for sales translations, but it is a very, very good mechanism for building network and for building community and building connections. And those connections, what you do with it at that point for sales, right? That's what sales is paid to do, to make those connections and then transform them into business opportunities. And so through the last few years, we've had extra concentration on training our sales team on how exactly to do that. Are you in the right groups? Are you even active on social? Do you even know where your customers are at? Are you looking at their posts? Do you see if they interact with yours? Are you even doing an inventory of who is there and who isn't? You just assume that because you're posting on Facebook, your customers are going to see that. No, you got to meet them where they're at. So our training has definitely shifted, and not only branding the rep in the right way. So the three core tenets that I spoke about earlier, but also researching who's active where, what groups should I be a part of, and what are they talking about? What are they interested in? Because I can't just come in and, let's just say you wouldn't go to a conference for crocheting and say, I'm here to talk about spackling walls. I think that doesn't make sense, right? And so we teach our sales team kind of the same concept. Meet your customers where they're at, and talk to them about the things that they're interested in. And then if you really want to start talking about posting and advocacy, start to advocate for the things that you have commonalities around, the things that you love, in addition to what they may find interesting too. So,
yeah, I think that's it's kind of related to all three of your pillars, but would just love your thoughts on this. I mean, I think one of the things that we've seen is, oftentimes assuming you've got kind of your profile and your brand crafted, right? And, you have a baseline of understanding of how to participate on social, and you also know where your audience or your communities are, and you're there. Oftentimes it can be not necessarily the business stuff, right? But connecting around common interests, which may just frankly be personal, right? I mean, is that...
Oh, yes.
What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on this. Okay, so I'm a self-proclaimed Captain Marvel nut. I read and collect comics with my husband as a hobby. We own Spider-Man comics. I'm literally looking at them on my wall right now. And one of the things that I advocate for all the time is that you just never know what others are going to connect with.
Yeah.
And that you really have to take the stance of vulnerability at times, to take a risk, to show that you're human. And that human piece of you is what connects you to other humans. It's not that incredible product that you've been hawking for the last 5 months. It's that maybe you really love a certain thing, or maybe that you support a certain cause, and it really resonates with another human that supports that cause or loves that thing. And I've had more conversations about my love for Captain Marvel, or for the MCU, or for DC Comics, or any and all of the above, than I've ever had about training and development. Because people want to talk about the next MCU movie, or Spider-Man just came out, or not Spider-Man, Venom is one of the Spider-Man movies. So people, they automatically kind of know. They're like, I see you sharing on social all the time about Marvel, so let's talk about the next movie. And that's what gets me in to talking to them about what's happening in my business, because then they'll eventually ask, so what are you doing? What's happening? What's new with you? And I can take that opportunity to be like, well, funny you should ask. Here's the new training course that's coming out soon, right? And it just always happens that way, but it's because of that personal connection. And so I am a huge advocate for really, really taking that risk of saying, I don't have to compromise my privacy to talk about something that's still uniquely human and real for me. And I think sometimes people think, oh, for me to show that I'm human, I've got to post a picture of my eggs that I ate this morning. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you just got to find what's that thing or series of things that show that you're real without compromising, anything that you may not want to share, and also shows that you're not a work robot, because
Right.
let's be honest, we're not, right? Like, what do you do at the end of the day? What is it that really drives you? Why are you working at all? Is it to perpetually work? I mean, I'm sure there's people like that out there, but most of us, we've got some form of family, whatever that looks like for you. And we have things that we're trying to do, or hobbies that we love, and or people that we're trying to support, or causes. Like, all of those are relevant, and you never know who's going to connect with you. And so for me, this is a huge push. I usually start with the human stuff and then say, okay, well, now tell me about your work stuff. Because
Totally.
that's, yeah, right. That's how you connect.
And if you do it backwards, it kind of doesn't work, right? I mean, it's like so I guess, being that you're kind of deep in training with, a giant workforce at Dell and with people doing all sorts of different things all over the globe. Do you ever find that maybe we found it to be somewhat challenging, and I think it comes down to kind of company culture more than anything, which from an external perspective for us, it's like, we can't really have a huge effect on that, right? Company culture is totally defined from within, and a whole variety of variables. Just like what issues or support have you come across over the last decade with respect to encouraging people to be, perhaps personal as a means to an end, right? I mean, like, do you ever feel pushback, or is this just something at Dell that, is just generally understood because the executives get it, or, what's your thoughts on that? Because some companies, like, if we were to have this conversation with, I don't know, some other company out there, right? We might get some really strange looks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, if we're going to have our employees on social, we just want them to present as like a worker of company X and sharing company news and, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's been an easy battle, because I think most people are just afraid to say the wrong thing in general, right? You have a generality of people that they want to appear competent, they want to appear likable, they want to appear that they know what they're talking about. Those are all drivers for most folks. But the reality, especially now with social, is that there was a time and a place for that, but now for you to really stand out, that vulnerability is a must.
Yeah.
The imperfections, you may not have it all figured out, and that is okay. And that is okay to say that, and it's okay to own that. And it's okay to also just be whoever you are. We struggled with it, and I think we still struggle with it from region to region, and also it just depends on platform too. On LinkedIn, are you going to go in and start talking about like your new dog that you just got? Maybe you just got a new puppy. Is that the appropriate place to do that? Possibly not. But could you speak about how you volunteered for, let's just say, like a shelter over the weekend, because it was part of something that you were giving back on behalf of your company? Now, is that directly related to work? Probably not, but it is showing some humanity in a very business-like fashion. And so we've had to try to shift the mindset of, what does showing your humanity look like now? Is it having to expose yourself and flaws? No. It's just about finding some realness in the situation or topic at hand. Like, with everything going on in the world these days, especially with the pandemic, Do we have to pretend that everything is rosy and sunshiny? Of course not. We're tired, and some of us are broken. And it is okay to be like, I don't have this figured out for working from home,
Mm,
but you know what? Here's my setup. Here's what I've tried. This is what I'm doing. Talking about real topics that resonate with other people that may be going through the same thing. Like recently with working families having to educate their kids at home, some of them, because we couldn't send them to school. Talking about just how are you dealing with that? And posting, the fact that, okay, my kids are on every Zoom call and this is life for me now. And showing that side of you. Something that's very real, very human, that isn't necessarily, again, this compromise of privacy that I think so many people are worried about.
mm,
And so it's been a step by step. It really has. And I don't think we've got it all figured out too. We've got some execs that are like, nope, don't ever want to do that. And then we have some employees that are like, not for me. And that's fine. I'm not here to convince everybody. But I will say this, and this is what I always tell all of my people, is that how many opportunities are you missing by not being real with your audience?
totally.
And that's the ticket there. It's opportunity loss that most people have to think through,
Yeah.
and that's a hard thing to convince.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Right. Because if someone, you're either, the first thing is you need to be known, you need to be present there. And then, do any of these people actually know who you are? Right.
Yeah.
In some
Yes.
respect.
And real. You gotta be real.
And I definitely don't think that I have the answers with respect to, Gen Z or anything. I mean, my wife and I are at the extreme tail end of the, millennial spectrum, but it seems to me like it's moving towards more and more, open vulnerability and exposure. And, the things that kids in their late teens, early 20s are comfortable with on TikTok would be, would like scare the bejesus out of, someone in their 40s. So
I kind of love it though. I love that the younger generations remind us to push the limits a bit. And I think that openness gets us to a new level of connection.
Yeah.
And, I'm a Gen Xer. So I do remember a time where we didn't have the internet and you had to like go and knock on somebody's door to be like, hey, you want to go and skate, right? Like I remember those times because I did it, but I also remember all the social media and everything in between that I'm an active, heavy user on. And the difference is that everybody now, like our Zennials, they'll never know those days. They'll always know the always on effect, right, of social media. So they've had to find ways to be like, how do I really truly connect with someone if I'm going to be online all the time? And they're figuring out faster than the rest of us that it is through taking the risk and being vulnerable and just trying to own who you really are.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah. That basically they've lived exclusively in that environment. And because I do think, for us slightly older people, we're kind of like, well, we can talk about things maybe a little bit more openly in person, right? It's not being recorded. Yes. It's, I don't know.
Right. And the rest of them are like, you know what? This is my life now. And so I might as well just own what I want to own and say what I want to say. And of course, there's going to be consequences, good and bad, for that. That they're not infallible, but neither are we. And so, there's a lot to learn from just the principle of it. What are you doing to show that you're human? How are you connecting to others? Is it real and authentic? If you're not doing any of those things, then you're missing out, right? And that's the big ticket here, is that you do have to share to show some of your character. And without those character proof points, how do we know who you really are online?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've got two more questions for you. How do you think about judging the success of training?
So let's let's go a little bit deeper. What do you mean by judging the success? Are you
Well,
talking about specifically KPIs
yeah,
or?
yeah. Just I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people who listen to this who are thinking about training. I mean, frankly, we're thinking about training in our company, right? We've grown to a certain size now where we're actually looking at enablement roles in a variety of areas, and so you know how do you judge success, or what kind of standards have you worked with those that you've reported to over the years in terms of, okay, we're going to go train this executive group, or we're going to train this employee group on
Mhm.
social. How do we kind of judge that it worked, or that it's working?
Yeah. So it depends per audience because we do have an audience base that we just need them to know the policy. So success looks like, did we get X amount of people trained on the policy this year? All right. So that's one measure of success. The other one, if we start looking towards our more high authority users, our executives, the people that we want spreading thought leadership and kind of owning their own brand, or those SMEs in our business, or even our employees that are advocates on behalf of the business, we look at, well, success for them is about what are they sharing and is their engagement, are their followers growing over time? Are their posts being engaged with at all, for that matter? Are they just being active? Are they sharing content, for that matter? And most people come to us from a training perspective with little to no direction. It's like, I know I should be using social. I don't really know how to do that. And so when we set them up and we look at like where they were, their baseline, which is maybe they just created a Twitter account, and then a year later, we look and see, well, they grew their following, their posts, they have been posting, so they've actually posted, and they're getting engagement back. We call that successful because we've activated someone who wasn't activated before. The other element of this is just from an executive standpoint, we monitor how often they are posting in general, and this is something that they sign up for. So it's not like we're just we're not creeping on our execs. That's what I want to make clear. They sign up to be measured, and we just take a look over time. Well, what content did you share that was super successful for you? Like, what did your audience like? What is it that really resonated at a certain time of year? And we give them those reports back that shows progression and shows opportunity as well. And so those are the KPIs that we monitor and track depending on kind of what audience member is coming to us for help.
That makes sense. What just to wrap it up, how have things changed with the pandemic, vis-a-vis training, and
Mm.
perhaps how has that changed your world, and where do you see training and enablement around social media, in general, or even just at Dell, looking like over the next year plus?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, if we weren't popular before, we certainly are now. It's just the pandemic has definitely put more of a spotlight on social activation and employee advocacy as a whole. And the reason behind that is that, we used to be able to just go to a customer's house, so to speak. I could come to your house and talk to you about my products and services and the things that we own near and dear. But when we shifted to almost 100% work from home, I no longer could travel to your house. So I had to figure out a way of connecting with you, and the proverbial you, in a fashion that made sense for you but also made sense for me, and social became that avenue. So a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic, they flooded our department. It was, I know I need to do this. I don't know how. Please help me figure out what to do. Right. And we train them on the brand piece, the profile piece, the content piece, the advocacy piece. Like, please go out there and be you because you are the brand, and reinforce that. And so it really, really lifted our department up in a spotlight that for years we were fighting to have. that we were for years, we were saying, this is important. You guys should really, really check this out. And they're like, meh, social. And then all of a sudden we took the ability of them to not travel away. And they're like, wait a second, social, I see you. I'm coming for you. Right. And so we were like, that's right. We're here to help. And so now our culture at Dell has definitely shifted to more of work from home. So it's becoming just more of a standardized practice. Listen, you're working from home. Nobody's really traveling. You've taught, the business as a whole that you can do all of these things remotely anyways. So let's just have a remote mindset. So what I see for the future for our department is really expanding on our training, expanding on not only platform point of views, but also where social is going to go next with connection. You have emerging platforms like TikTok and Clubhouse, and even Tumblr is having a resurgence, believe it or not. You have all these platforms and avenues, and we've got to find ways to teach our employees on how to connect again where their customers are. So if their customers are going to be on Clubhouse, then we probably need to figure out a way to train them on how to do this on behalf of the brand. And if there really is a need for connecting through TikTok, guess what? I better start learning how to do those TikTok dances. Like teaching, and I mean, I say that jokingly, but essentially, we will have to evolve our education as the communication roles. And I think that's important, is that modalities change. I mean, it used to be MySpace, like rest in peace, MySpace. And then it moved into Facebook, and Facebook to Twitter, Twitter to Instagram, Instagram to TikTok, TikTok to Clubhouse. Like, we've got to evolve with the platforms too, in the way that people communicate. So I see future of communications really kind of emboldened to the principles of connection and making sure that they understand how to do that connection no matter the modality.
Well, I think that's a wonderful point to end on. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Jenny.
Oh. This was a joy, Cameron. Thank you for having me. And hopefully this was interesting to your listeners from an L&D perspective.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean, I think to the final point you were making, this is a priority for every organization, right? Even small ones where, they felt like, hey, we have few enough people, we've got our hands around everything. The same sort of kind of fundamental dynamics are affecting, a 25 to 50 person organization that are affecting a, 100,000 plus person organization. And, everyone's in a different position. And frankly, no matter how sophisticated, you are in your own usage, I think there's still room for, training and enablement to really understand how to use it in a kind of a truly professional context, especially kind of around, a particular organization. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It was a gift. Thank you so much for this. And for perpetuating another modality of communication through podcasting. Really, really enjoy it.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.